I'm Justin Davis, and this is Drone Camps RC. Hey guys, welcome back to the Drone Camps channel. I'm Justin Davis, and guess what? I'm super excited today because I have a 5-inch racer quad right here. It's the KINGKONG 200GT, and it's rocking some micro brushless components on there. So it's gonna be a really nice feather light quadcopter with an awesome power to weight ratio. So I'm expecting lots of throttle, plenty of punch, lots of float, and pretty much almost like a perfect style freestyle machine for big field maneuvers, and plenty of power coming back in on the bottom of those maneuvers. If you're going to do power loops, you're not going to fly into the ground because you didn't have enough power to pull back out of something. They did put a little smaller motors on this one. They're 1806 motors and 20 amp ESC, but you can run 4S on 20 amp ESC all day long. We used to do it 3 or 4 years ago on our first initial 5-inch setups, and what makes this one special is that they took the fly egg dome, the side rails, the aluminum side rails, and put it over top of a 5-inch unibody frame, and sort of continuing that fly egg traditional style frame that we've seen for the past year or so. And now we're seeing basically a 5-inch version of a fly egg, which is really exciting because they reduced the motor size. They didn't add something on there like a 2207, which you would sort of expect with a 5-inch quad. Right now the trend seems to be low KV and big honking motors, but right now I'm seeing something different with this quad, and that's okay because I test flew it yesterday, and what they did with the 1806s is they reduced the weight of the quad. They reduced the overall weight by making the motors a little bit smaller. So what you can see right here is, yeah, that's what they did. They reduced the weight by using a little bit smaller motors, but you still have tons of power with this quad because of the fact that we have a 2500 kV motor on this frame. So even though we have smaller motors, we have reduced weight, and that just makes it fly really good. So I'm very excited about this quad, and let me go ahead now and plug in a battery. We'll do some line of sight. After that, we'll do some FPV, and I'll show you what this quad's all about. I'm super excited about this one, so here we go. All right guys, let's go ahead and do that line of sight flight test. I think you're gonna be pretty amazed at how smooth this quad sounds. Here we go. Listen to that, you can barely hear it at half throttle, almost half throttle in a hover. Listen to that. Get it a little bit closer. Such a nice flying quad. Super smooth. And what I'm most excited about, like I said before, you've got micro brushless components on here. 1806 motors on a 5-inch frame is really exciting. Probably one of the coolest quads you're gonna see from KINGKONG so far. In the history of KINGKONG, this is one of the most really just baddest quads that I've flown from them yet. I love this power combination. Super smooth, and I'll show you a punch out. 1, 2, 3. Look at that. That's insane. Super powerful. And we're not flying on 2207s or 2206, 2205. We're actually under that with 1806. That's really cool. Look at that. It's a feather light for sure. That's really exciting. I mean, as far as freestyle goes, and even on the race course, you're probably going to be competitive with other people as long as you don't crash. Sometimes when you don't crash, you win the race. I love this. And it's really a lot of fun to fly line of sight, but this thing is all about FPV, guys. One of the most exciting quads to come into my shop this year so far. So I've really got to put this down and show you guys some of the flight footage of how good this thing flies. Look at that. That is a beautiful quad. Here we go, guys. Let's get this KINGKONG GT up in the air. Here we go.
took off my pants, but then I turned on the TV. And that's about the time she walked away from me. Nobody likes you when you're 23 and are still more amused by TV shows. What the hell is ADD? My friends say I should act my age. What's my age again? What's my age again?
Alright guys, welcome back from that flight test. You're looking at one of King Kong's best releases ever in the history of King Kong. This is one of the coolest and funnest to fly quadcopters that they've released in any of the series of King Kong quads that I've flown over the past couple years, including the GT series, the ET series, the big whoop style, the little tiny 6, that's a little indoor quad, we can't really compare that, but this is a whole nother level. This is 5-inch, but it's micro brushless components on a 5-inch quad frame, which is super exciting because that is the trend right now, and everything is going smaller and smaller mainly because we want the power in the frame, but we're trying to shave off and see how much we can reduce the weight on a 5-inch setup. So I think they've really nailed it on this setup. I really like the way this turned out. It seems like they used the Fly Egg 138 canopy side rails on this one, because here's my 138 right here, and if you look at them side to side, they almost look exactly identical. They even have the same type of engravings on the side, and they both still have the numbers for your tilt. I've got 45 degrees of tilt on this one, and I've got 30 degrees tilt on my 138, mainly because I knew I was wanting to fly this one super fast, and the higher you go with your camera, the faster you're going to be able to fly. And if you're doing a huge power loop, if you're looking further back, you're going to see where you're going in the top apex of the loop. You're going to be able to see back behind the quad. So pretty important if you're going to do freestyle to have a pretty high camera tilt. So this one has 20 amp ESCs on it, and this one has 20 amp ESCs on it, 4-in-1 BL Heli ESCs, and I was running the D-Shot protocol on this one. But if you're going to start somewhere, if you are a brand new pilot, you're just getting into FPV, start out with the 136 one that I reviewed a few days ago. This one has an actual run cam on there, and I'll try to put the link down there below for this one, but you want to make sure, if you buy this from GearBest, make sure that they send you the one with the orange run cam on it, not the older version with the black sort of run cam clone on there. So this is a newer, updated version of this quadcopter, but great place to start if you're just getting into FPV. Then you can move up to the 138, and this is different than this one because this one has 2.5 or 2.8 inch props on here with the 2 little screws there that go down into the motors, and this one has larger motors on here with 3-inch props. So a different animal. You're going to run this on 4S, and this is going to mostly run on 2S right here for the 136 model. But 138 aside, this is a completely different animal than the larger big brother, the 200 GT. So now I'll give you a little close-up look of the LDARC branded King Kong motors. These are 1806s. They're quite a bit bigger than your 1406 that we had on pushing the 3-inch props on the 138 model, but this is plenty of power for a 5-inch prop on such a lightweight frame. Since they did reduce the weight, we're getting the same type of performance as some larger motor on a heavier style quad. The more weight you have to have more power to push that weight. So the less weight you have, you're sort of equalizing out the power to weight ratio, and that's great, and it improves performance for particularly on freestyle. Now for racing, if you had this in a multi-GP situation, it would be interesting to see how it performed next to something that had huge motors on it, like 2207s, running a 4S 1500. You just don't need to run that much weight on a quad. For this particular setup, you're just fine running like a 4S 1300 battery. That's totally all you need for this quad. You could probably even go a little bit lighter. If you wanted to have a light, super light feeling on this quad, you could run something like a 1000 or an 850 milliamp battery, and that would be a pretty interesting experiment for this particular quad to bring the weight down. And don't let the 20 amp 4-in-1 ESC scare you. It can definitely handle 4S all day long, no problem there. I also did a motor test when I came down to see if any of these motors were hot after I really ran this thing through the wrenches and really pushed some of my batteries. I didn't have any of my motors come down hot, which was super great, and that means that the motors are efficiently running under the D-Shot protocol on the ESC, so that's a really nice thing. And now you're looking at this frame from the side, and you see these aluminum side plates right here. This is what I really love about the FPV Fly Egg series. It's really nice because I've never actually bent one. In a lot of the crashes that I've had with these, I've had tons of these so far over the last year or so since they first came out. The first revisions flew really well, and I didn't have any problems with them breaking off the frame, which is great. Now other quads that I've flown with sort of carbon fiber sidewalls, I've broken those, and I've broken those parts and had to get new parts and wait for new parts, and a lot of times I've broken them right around where the camera attaches to them, so or up in the front right here where the bottom of this part touches the unibody, or the replaceable arm style X series quads. Now this one is super cool because also looking up in the front where the camera is, we have a total camera enclosure right there all the way around the front. I don't see this lens is sticking out anywhere. So if you do take a frontal impact, it's probably going to survive a frontal impact. The camera is tucked back just far enough inside the frame to give it good protection from all angles. And like I said on the 138 yesterday when I reviewed that one, the very bottom of this PCB right here where your run cam is actually located behind this camera frame, this isn't sticking out the bottom of the front of the quad. I've seen other designs recently that had that sticking out, and that is a huge no-no because I have smacked those cameras and broken many run cams because of frame designs like that. I don't know if I have a sort of example of that sitting around my bench anywhere, but that can be a problem. So this is nice that all of this is covered up really well. So I pulled my receiver out of the way, and you guys can see that I used a couple pieces of zip tie up here for that, and I just used some VHB to stick it down to the top of the flight controller. Now this is an Omnibus F4 SD style flight controller, and it does have a little button right here, and you can reflash this, but what's cool about this is it comes with Betaflight OSD on there, so you can go in there, you can add your pilot name and all that good stuff, move stuff around on the screen, and then save it back to the flight controller, so you don't have to have any external sort of run cam style OSD on this one like you did on the 136 model. So this is nice that it does have Betaflight OSD integrated into it, and it's running Betaflight 3.2, which is great because it's pretty close to the latest version of Betaflight, which is really nice. I had a nice tune on this one. And I did want to show you guys where the receiver wire hooks up to. So I have it just wired up just like this. It's plugged in the very back slot right there, and that's running S-Bus. And there is a diagram inside the box that will show you how to wire up your receiver. It does take several different types of receivers. It takes Futaba, it takes FlySky if you're running iBus, and it also takes DSM-2 transmitter receivers. So pretty cool. You can run 3-volt receivers on this board, no problem. Now let's talk about the frame real quick, and we already talked about the top plate, but the carbon plate on the bottom, this is a unibody style design. It has 2 slots right here for your sort of battery strap to go around, and this is totally fine. You do have a beeper located right here and your VTX right here. You've got motor bumpers on the outside of this frame, so if you do take a side crash or a frontal crash, it's going to protect the motor bell a little bit, and you really want to have these on a lot of designs. If they're pushed right up to the edge of the motor bell, a lot of times what's going to happen is you're going to damage this motor bell in a side crash. That's going to be the first thing that hits a solid object. So it's nice that they do have 3 spots right here for a little bit of protection against bumps in your crashes. Now also, they have this going back through here, and like the 138 model, they had a zip tie right here. You probably want to add another zip tie out here on the arm, and make sure you don't have it close to zip tied on the side of the arm right here where it's rubbing on the arm itself, rubbing on the carbon fiber, because that carbon fiber will cut through this wire and eventually short out your quad. So make sure it's well underneath there, just like this, so it's not rubbing on anything. Now also on the bottom of this frame, we talked about the frame being 4mm thick, and that's a nice thick solid frame. I don't feel any kind of flex in this frame, which is really great. I don't feel like it's a very cheap carbon fiber, and normally if it's going to be super brittle and break really easy, but you could replace all of this with a unibody frame, and my guess is that they're going to be actually pretty cheap if you needed more parts for this, and they should be out pretty soon because it's King Kong gear. And also guys, before you fly any quad, take your driver and go over the entire thing, side plates and on the bottom of the quad. Make sure all the bolts are nice and snug. Don't over tighten anything. Make sure that the bolts connecting your motor to the bottom plate right here, those are nice and snug. Don't over tighten those because you will strip the motor threading. Be very careful about that. If you want to pull these off and use a little bit of Loctite on it, you can also do that, and that's going to make sure that they don't vibrate out, because with some quads that I've gotten brand new, I've come home after a first test flight and actually seen missing bolts on the bottom of my motors. So something to look out for is making sure that all your bolts are tight before you go out for your first flight. So this is the box that it comes with, and it's very similar to the 138 style box that came with this one, but this one's not going to fit in the box with the props on, so that's kind of a bummer. If you wanted to transport it using this box, you'd have to take the props off and it will fit back in the box. And this one did not come with a receiver or an extra battery in the box, so I'll try to recommend some 4S batteries to use on this that have a nice high seed rating and also a battery that's going to last and give you some flight time. Some of them, if you get a cheap battery or a bad type of brand, it's going to do a lot of swelling on you, so certain brands I do avoid. Now also inside the box, you have plenty of room for storage in here. These are cool boxes if you wanted to use it for storing. If you wanted to take this part out right here and maybe put some tools on this side and then use this box to put your props in, you can get plenty of props in here. If you just take them out of the pack, you can put tons and tons of props in here. I did get some extra props with this, and it looks like they gave us 2 sets of props, I would say, these neon green props. I did not try these out. You have right turn here and left turn here, but in my experiences over the past 4 or 5 years flying race quads, I always find that the default props are semi-okay. What I would recommend is running a better prop on there. Something like the Cyclones are going to give you much better performance and a lot less vibration. So if you run a prop and you see vibration in your quad, take that prop off and try a nice high grade prop, because that's going to actually reduce a lot of the vibration, and you might not even need to PID tune it from the original stock settings in Betaflight. Now also in the box you do get a pamphlet, and that shows you a few different setups for your receivers in here. It gives you a schematic for the flight controller, and that's pretty cool. It shows you where everything is on your receiver hookup, where the boot button is, USB, where your LED and 5-volt buzzer hookup if you needed to do that. Now, what I might suggest on this quad to clean up the video a lot, and they didn't do this is probably one con, is they did not add any type of capacitor on here for the back of where your power cables are. So if you took a capacitor and you hooked up on there, it might actually clean up this video a ton. That's pretty much a standard trend these days that a lot of companies are doing, but they didn't do it on this one. Now also in here you have how to switch the VTX from 25 milliwatt to 100 milliwatt, which is cool, and it shows you all the different bands in here. And it does show you how to hook up the DSMX receiver. So DSMX, Futaba, and your FlySky guys, all that information is in this manual. So that's pretty nice. Now they do give you a few different accessories in here as well, and I'm just going to take those out. You get 2 wire harnesses for your receiver, which is very nice, because if you decide to take this one off and put a different receiver on it, you can do that with that second cable. You get some rubber bands in here. I'm not sure what your rubber bands would be for. I wouldn't hold a battery on with a rubber band for a 4S 1300. That's not going to be a good decision. You also get some zip ties in here, which is great for putting your receiver antennas up off the top of the quad using a little bit of thin heat shrink. You can go to somewhere like Harbor Freight and get a whole bunch of heat shrink for really cheap, just a few dollars. You also get some extra sort of black medical tape in here, and those go around the arms of the quad to hold down your motor wire. So if you're out in the field and one of them gets muddy or starts getting all gunked up, they give you 2 extras in the box, which is nice. And I talked about this before, damaging your motors. They do give you motor bumpers, and these are KINGKONG RC branded motor bumpers. Make sure that you use the hardware that comes along in the box or in the pack with this, because they're going to be just a little longer to accommodate these. But when you take these off, make sure that you use the other hardware that you had before on the motors, because if you use too long screws on these motors, you can damage or even short out your motors. And last but not least, in the package you get sort of, I guess it's going to be a KINGKONG branded battery strap, and this is one of those battery straps that I might use like once or twice, but this is not really going to be something I'm going to use very often. I'm going to want to use one of the ones that has a little hook on the end of it, so a much better strap for using 4S 1300 batteries than something like this. I would probably push this one to the side and not use it. Now I've got the scale on. Let's go ahead and put the KINGKONG 200GT on the scale. Give you a dry weight there. It's 198 grams. Now this is a battery that I would probably fly on there, and this is a 4S 1300. That's going to get you an upwards of 367 grams total takeoff weight. It is heavier than some of the other featherweights out there with a 1300 on it, but you can actually reduce the weight under 300 grams if you do something like a 4S 850 milliamp battery. That's going to get you at 297 grams, and you're still going to get like 3 minutes with an 850 on this particular setup. So if you want a total featherweight type of quad, this is the way you can do it. If you want longer flight time with something like the 4S 1300 and you want 4 minutes to 4.5 minutes, use a 4S 1300 right there, and that'll get you up in that longer flight range. But let's weigh something that's been pretty popular out there. This is 373 grams, and with a 4S battery, we're over 500 grams right there. We're at 542 grams for this popular race quad right here that I built. That was the Cheetah. And let's check out another custom lowrider that I did, and that one dry weight is going to be 336 grams, and put the 4S 1300 on there and you're over 500 grams right there. A little bit lighter than my stretch quad that I just put on there, but 505 grams, that's a lot heavier setup than something like the KINGKONG 200GT. So I'm pretty happy with that dry weight. That's 198 grams with a 4S 850. You're still under 300 grams, so that's actually pretty good. So let's go ahead and summarize this review, and please do go back and check out the KINGKONG 138 here and the 2S version of this one, which is running 2.8-inch props, and this is going to be your 2S setup, and this would be your 4S 5-inch Featherlight from KINGKONG. It's been an exciting week for KINGKONG stuff, and I think that all of these quads have performed really, really well. I enjoyed flying each one of them for what they are, and I think the power to weight ratio on each one of these is pretty awesome. So you get a nice performance out of the power systems on here, and one of the biggest things that I like about all 3 of these quads is the fact that when I plugged them in, I took them out to the field, I didn't have any issues. I've had other quads in the last couple of years I've plugged in, they've smoked. They have given me jitters on the first battery. They've had all kinds of vibrations or camera vibrations or the way the camera was mounted. You couldn't get enough tilt out of it. All kinds of things come into play when you get a brand new quad in. You never quite know what they're going to do. And I have to say that most of their quads, all the way down to the Tiny 6 and the KINGKONG 200GT that I flew last year, every single one of KINGKONG quads have flown great for me. So definitely thumbs up to KINGKONG. Keep doing what you're doing. I think you guys have something going right for you guys. Maybe you guys are flying these before you're sending them out to customers. And I did see some stickers on the box that did say that they were flown, test flown, and they passed. They have a little sticker here. It says flying QC pass. So maybe that's something to do with actually testing these in the factory before they get shipped out to customers. That would be an awesome thing. So anyway, thanks for watching this review, guys. This one's been a lot of fun. I think this is probably one of the most rock star quads this year. For the price, it's not bad. So check this one out in the link below, and you might be able to get this one for under $200, which is pretty crazy for a Featherlight 5-inch racer. I really like it, and I think this one's going to stay in my collection. So thanks for watching, guys. As always, if you're out in the field and you see somebody that needs some help, help others and help them get into the hobby, because it is a lot of fun to fly these. So please do subscribe. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.